The whole world will pay to see this. We're millionaires, boys. I'll share it with all of you. Why, in a few months, his name will be up in lights on Broadway. Kong, the eighth wonder of the world. These famous words were written by Ruth Rose, and at that time, I'm sure she had no idea that in many ways, this saying would come true. In the words of Peter Jackson, King Kong is perhaps the movie that has inspired more people than any other film ever made. In many ways, this is true. Without this amazing tale of beauty and beast, people like Steven Spielberg, Orson Welles, Stanley Kubrick, Frank Darabont, Rick Baker, Ray Harryhausen, and even Peter Jackson himself would not have been what they are and were today. All of this comes from the inspirational words of a few people. Directors and producers Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack, music by Max Steiner, sound design by Murray Spivak, screenplay by James Ashmore Creelman and Ruth Rose, and visual effects by the pioneer stop-motion animator Willis O'Brien. Not only is this film a milestone in the history of cinema in terms of visual effects, but as well as creating a whole new genre of giant monster films, styles of screenplays, soundtracks, and even created a new branch of Oscars for the Academy Awards, the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. If this film were to have never been made, cinema as we know it would be unbelievably different and perhaps backwards. Kong is a story that many believe should be remade with every generation, for it is a story that is priceless and contains visual effects that can be added to or upgraded throughout time. Since its first release in 1933, King Kong has officially been remade 2 times. In 1976, released by Paramount, produced by the infamous Dino De Laurentiis and directed by the well-known director John Guillermin. And in 2005, released by Universal and produced and directed by the Academy Award winner and knighted Peter Jackson. Joining me here once again for this chat is Zazubaar. Say hi, Zazubaar.
Greetings.
And originally, Gorzard6 was supposed to join us here, but unfortunately he could not make it, so I'm pretty sure eventually we'll have a chat with him in it, because he's a pretty cool guy.
It may be coming up soon.
Yeah, who knows? And it might be about Universal.
It might have already been recorded. Might have.
Who knows? It could be about Universal movies. Who knows?
Could.
Okay, so, I guess I'm just going to lay down the rules in case you missed it in that little speech I gave. Here we're going to be talking about not Kong himself. We're not going to be talking about every movie Kong has been in. Instead, we're just going to be talking about the actual films with the name King Kong. So we're going to be talking about the original and its 2 remakes.
Sounds good. Oh, no Queen Kong?
Oh, God. Oh, God. It's really scary because I've seen that.
I haven't. I know. I don't want to, so.
It's really bad. Okay, so enough about Queen Kong. We're here to talk about the adult alpha male King Kong. So, we'll start off with the original masterpiece and my all-time favorite film, King Kong. What are your opening thoughts on Kong?
My opening thoughts on King Kong. Well, it was a long, long time ago in a small house on Long Island when I first saw it. And a long, long time later, it's still one of the greatest movies ever made. My second favorite movie of all time. It really is just one of those movies you gotta see to believe, because it's just so amazing that something like this could have been made like 3 years after the talkies were invented, were majorly used. I mean, it's just totally breathtaking. See, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's probably the best made movie I've ever seen, and it really is just one of the greatest movies ever made. That's really all I have to say in terms of like opening thoughts before we go into any more detail.
Yeah, and as I said, I believe your favorite film is Gojira, right?
Indeed, it is.
Okay. The reason why it's my favorite film, I believe, is the same reason why Gojira is your favorite film. This movie is literally what is one of the movies that literally inspired me to want to become a film director, cinematography producer person. I remember I was, I believe, 6 or 7 years old when I first watched it, and my cousin was staying at my house for the summer. She went to the movie gallery that we used to have around here before it went bankrupt. She said, "Adam, you're gonna love this." And it was an old VHS tape, and she popped it in, and it was King Kong. And I remember staying up one night to watch it. I started watching it at around 6 o'clock. I just remember the scene where you first see the natives, and it was the scariest moment in my life. The entire movie is...
so too.
Right. It's just so unbelievably well made and so revolutionary, because before this, visual effects were never meant to be made for, like, a main character, and Kong is clearly a main character in this movie. And not only that is he a character, he is a fully dimensional, round character. And this is literally the first time in the history of cinema, this is literally the first time in cinema that we were able to see and hear a giant monster.
Right. I mean, I can't think of anything else before this that was, like, really... This is really technically the first kaiju movie. I mean, I know it's not Japanese, but if you're going to use monster or giant monster by not saying giant monster, you would call it a kaiju. Mm-hmm. And this really is the first kaiju movie.
Right. And you know, not only that, I mean, even it being, like, considered the first kaiju movie, even though I wouldn't consider it a kaiju movie, but...
Well, not by definition, it's not, but, like,
the first, like, giant monster movie, that, I mean, would make it historical enough. But not only is it the first giant monster movie, but it has one of the greatest stories ever.
And it has a really simple story. That's what the beauty is of it.
Right. Exactly.
Because it allows you to elaborate on the characters and just the atmosphere. I mean, really, this was one of the first times this sort of story was committed to film, and there have been just countless retellings of the whole Beauty and the Beast thing afterwards. Mm-hmm. I mean, famously, the movie called Beauty and the Beast and all its little adaptations, but this was really the first screen version of it.
Right.
And arguably, I think, the best.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to get into a little more later is just that this is kind of, in a way, the final fantasy of film. And obviously, that's not the case, but it's like it takes place in the time period in which it was made in, and it still comes off as a fantastical adventure story that totally escapist and didn't have to set itself in a previous time.
Right. And you know, just something I would like to say sort of like on the escapist idea. This was made in the middle of the Great Depression. And so this movie, I discovered that RKO was in a pretty big financial hole, much like 20th Century Fox was for the Planet of the Apes series.
Yeah.
But for different reasons, of course. And this was, in terms of the owner of RKO, an extreme risk film. This film would either make us the most powerful film studio in the United States, or it would make us go completely bankrupt and there'd be no more RKO. And thank God it was such a big success.
Yeah, definitely.
This movie was huge when it was first released back in 1933.
They re-released it for like 4 consecutive years after this.
Yeah. You know, before we get into really depth on, like, our favorite scenes and some of the allegories, which there are tons of allegories in this movie.
Sure, yeah.
I would just love to say how... I don't know if you really are aware about, like, how hard it was to make this movie, or to even get this movie sort of basically off of the basement floor. It was.
I have an idea.
Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack had an idea in their head about basically a Beauty and the Beast story about a giant ape that falls in love with this blonde girl, and then these sailors have to go and find her, and then what winds up happening is they were actually inspired by the new discovery of the Komodo dragons.
Yep.
And how civilization civilization killed the Komodo dragons once they brought them over to to the zoos here in America. And so they had the idea that civilization would turn on the ape and ultimately kill it. And for a long time they didn't know how to do it. RKO was actually, I believe, their first studio that they went to, and RKO was like, okay, do it. Originally, Marion C. Cooper just wanted to get mountain gorillas and have them fight Komodo dragons.
Yeah, that was the original idea. And going back to what you said earlier about the Komodo dragons just being discovered, gorillas were just discovered as well. I mean, they were discovered, I believe, in the early 1910s.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
And the Empire State Building was completed in 1932.
Right.
So there's so many aspects in this movies that were just so new at the time.
Yeah, and the thing about what they were going to do with the whole trick photography thing is that it really couldn't have happened the way they wanted to do it. Like you said, they wanted to originally just get to a mountain gorilla and a Komodo dragon in a room having them fight each other. I think this was pretty much before the whole animal rights things in movies were put into place. Like, you could pretty much do anything you wanted to with an animal in a film and no one would really try to stop you.
Right.
But it wasn't practical because, I mean, how are you going to make them look giant compared to a girl, right?
Right.
And that was the issue. The other issue was budget. How are you going to feed those kind of animals on a smaller of the time budget? And even though it was kind of a smaller budget of the times, it still was huge. Like, in terms of budget for RKO.
Yeah.
Like, they were kind of struggling with it.
Yeah. But, you know, Marion C. Cooper later wrote in his memoirs that I have indeed read, he said that was his first idea, but he still didn't like it because he wanted to tell a more human story. And that wouldn't simply be human at all. It'd just be a gorilla fighting a Komodo dragon. What had happened was Willis O'Brien was known for working under Thomas Edison, who created the motion picture camera.
Made the first on-screen Frankenstein.
Willis O'Brien made a movie called The Dinosaur and the Missing Link, which was like a short 5-minute stop-motion animation video.
I've seen that.
And it's really cool. And he also did the visual effects for The Lost World, made in 1925, which was in some ways a milestone for visual effects. But
kind of the first giant monster movie, but they're not really monsters.
Yeah, they're dinosaurs. But anyways, what had happened was Willis O'Brien was also a pretty intricate and detailed story writer, because he was actually pretty good at the stories that he wrote. He wrote a screenplay called Creation, and RKO absolutely loved it. What wound up happening was that Willis O'Brien basically locked himself into a little studio corner and started animating the scene from the screenplay, which consists of a sailor that got really pissed off with the people that he's with, and he's walking around, but he comes across this baby triceratops, and he shoots it. And of course Mama doesn't like that and chases the sailor and winds up gorging him to death. That cost $30,000.
Yeah, not practical.
That was not practical. Right. Naturally, the studio was absolutely horrified by this. So, Creation was shit-canned. And it wasn't really... The screenplay basically was just a remake to The Lost World. It wasn't all that spectacular, but, I mean, it still would have been cool to look at. But Marion C. Cooper took that screenplay and incorporated it into King Kong. And several scenes from Creation are actually in King Kong. In Creation, it was originally an Arsinocereum, which I believe was like an ancient ancestor to a modern-day elephant. It was to chase these sailors onto a log and knock them all off into this river where they all fell into a volcanic chasm to their deaths. One of the screenplays or drafts for King Kong, an Arsinocereum was to chase sailors onto a log, and then Kong was to come out on the other side. In the movie, this is the one scene I don't like in the movie, is it never explains why the hell didn't the sailors get off the log. But then I read the screenplay, and I was like, that's why. Because the Arsinocereum was on one side, and Kong was on the other, so they had nowhere to go. Willis O'Brien decided to change the Arsinocereum into a Sparachosaur, and the Sparachosaur chases them onto the log, and then Kong's on the other side, and they can't get off. Which, if you actually look carefully at that scene, on the other side of the log, you can see the Sparachosaur.
Yeah, but it doesn't stay there.
Yes, it does.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen that scene... I've seen this movie so much. I'm able to nitpick everything in this movie.
Yeah, I'm not remembering. Well, because I remember the Brachiosaur gets out of the water, attacks the guy in the tree.
Yes.
Carl Denham gets his shirt stuck in the branch.
And did you also notice how they're looking frantically backwards?
Right.
Naturally, at first I thought it was because of the Brachiosaur. you think that it's still chasing them, but the dinosaur stops to to eat that guy that had just snatched out of the tree. So what the hell are they looking at?
Yeah, and they're looking at that thing.
And they're looking at the Sparachosaur in the original screenplay, and apparently it was shot, but
a lot of that whole scene was cut out.
Yeah, like the Lost Spider Pit sequence.
Right, which Peter Jackson recreated.
Yeah, actually twice. He recreated it with stop motion, as written in the original screenplay, and then he also remade it in his, of course, remake.
Right, yeah. I do love that scene, though. I mean, it's just really iconic.
It is, and the music is so good.
Yeah, well, that whole movie is brilliantly scored. And the thing about Max Steiner was that he was, as quoted by, I forget the guy's name, but this was in the documentary before the 65th anniversary of VHS tape, said that Max Steiner was a complete worrywart.
Yes.
And that he panicked every time he wrote a scene score out because he thought everyone was going to hate it.
Yeah, because
and he called him home. He called
Murray Spivak.
He also did he did the grunts for Kong. He called him at his house right after he got back from the studio and was like, "Hey, my music, I'm quitting tomorrow. Will you tell them for me?" And it didn't end up happening because he ended up finishing the movie.
Yeah.
That's hilarious, though, because his score is brilliant.
Which, you know, what I also found funny was in Memoirs of Marion C. Cooper. Originally, RKO, because of how expensive King Kong was, they were just going to have stock music from other films. And Marion C. Cooper put up $50,000 of his own money to hire Max Steiner.
Oh, jeez, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and eventually, of course, the studio reimbursed Marion C. Cooper, but
because it came out so well.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Speaking of sound design, I love Kong's roar.
I love all the roars in this movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, I do. I also love the Tyrannosaurus roar. That one also stuck in my head as a kid.
Right.
The King Kong roar really, really stuck in my head as a kid. Like, I could just hear it playing in my mind whenever I either saw the poster for a movie or if I read the novelization quite a few times, and whenever I just looked at it, I could hear Kong's roar. And when I found out what it was, I was kind of surprised. Like, originally, when I was a kid, I thought it was an actual gorilla's roar. But when I found out, it was a lion's roar. Lion's roar forward, tiger roar backwards, I think. Unless I'm getting them mixed up. And I was just blown away. I'm like, because it doesn't sound like that.
Yeah,
but I guess that's the point. And it just sounds so awesome. Really original. Which, kind of the other two Kong's roars were not that original. I mean, 2005 better than 76, because 76 is kind of a stock roar.
It is a stock roar.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll get into this more later, actually. Someone actually did the voice for Kong in 76, but I'll get more into that in 76 when we talk about that. But otherwise, this movie is just brilliantly sound designed. And that's why I think it's the best, most well-made movie ever made. Because this was, right when talkie films were made.
Yeah, this is the first time ever sound mixing was used.
Yeah,
ever.
Dracula was 31, and that was the first sound horror movie ever.
Yeah.
And then this was 2 years later and blew it out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I could just, gush over this movie for, days.
Yeah. The movie is just pure brilliance. And you know what also I found funny? And it's sort of a shame, too, but because Gone with the Wind made in 1939 was such a huge... It had a bigger budget than King Kong did. During the burning of Atlanta scene, they actually burnt the wall for King Kong. Yeah.
And wasn't Kong's Gate also part of something else? Like it was used for something else?
Oh, it was used for several sets after that.
Well, before that, I thought.
No, I didn't know that. I thought it was created... Oh, no, it could have been. It could have been.
Well, from what I remember, they said that it was used before and after. I might be wrong on that, though, because it looks like it's brand new, but I'm probably wrong, so don't take my word for it, because I haven't seen that 2-disc special edition, which goes into immaculate detail. I know you have, so you probably know more about this than I do. But they used it a lot, and that was common practice back then. I mean, a lot of the Universal sets, to bring that up again, were also used very frequently afterwards. And
actually, the entire jungle sets for King Kong were reused from a movie that
The Most Dangerous Game.
Yeah, The Most Dangerous Game, which is, again, a pretty good movie, directed by Ernest B. Schoedsack.
I have not seen that.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty good. It's nowhere near as good as King Kong, of course, but it was a pretty entertaining movie.
Yeah, I know the premise of it. It's like people being hunted by other people.
Yeah, it's a really creepy premise.
And what's kind of funny is that Robert Armstrong and Fay Wray were in that movie as well.
And they play complete opposites.
Yeah, Fay Wray wasn't a natural blonde. Cooper thought that it would look great. She would be a natural blonde in the script. So they gave her a wig, and it looks really convincing. Like,
it does, yeah.
It looks like natural hair.
Yeah.
And it just fits. I'm not trying to stereotype, but I don't know, it just fits that role.
It truly does. I mean, that's really what gets Kong to fall in love with Ann Darrow. His
golden prize.
Right. Exactly.
That makes her stand out from all the other Native women that he was, well, as elaborated on in the 2005 film, murdering. Which they probably couldn't have shown in 33. Gotta give him a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
But it's very funny, actually.
All right. I guess now we can just start talking about our favorite the characters.
Well, I think me and you both gush over Carl Denham.
I mean, Carl Denham is one of the best written characters ever.
Sure, yeah. Robert Armstrong's performance is just simply fantastic.
Yeah.
And he actually prefers Son of Kong, his performance, I mean, over this. I don't. I prefer his performance in the original. And here's why. He's just so energetic. He gets you to believe whatever he wants you to. And he just seems to think he has so much control over everything. I love his line where he's like, "I don't need a cameraman."
Shoot, because I could have gotten a swell picture of a rhino, but the kid got scared. Darn fool, I was right there with a rifle.
Yeah. I love that line. And it's just like, it's so funny because he doesn't have any other crew with him. Like, no audio, no nothing. I mean,
yeah. Well,
is this supposed to be a silent movie?
This is commenting on, in my opinion, one of the allegories for this movie is that Kong 33 is supposed to represent the Roaring Twenties, and Carl Denham is that representation. Yeah, and also Kong himself represents the Roaring Twenties. He's king on top of the world. Doesn't think anything can take him down. Quoting Jack Driscoll, he's up somewhere where a whole army couldn't get at him. Right, and then he falls. And then he falls, and that represents the beginning of the Great Depression. Which also happens for Denham. Carl Denham is such a good character, but the scene where he goes, "It was beauty killed the beast." He pulls it off great. But he uses the wrong delivery. He does. It's almost like he knew this was going to happen. Which he didn't. It's part of his whole character arc that he didn't know. He thought he could be defeated. Right. He just says it he just says it too wise and like, "It was beauty who killed the beast." Like, almost like he's telling someone telling someone who didn't know. Like, he just found out himself. Which is the one area where Jack Black beats Robert Armstrong's acting. I just fucking love Carl Denham. He's just an all-around genius. And I mean, I love it how when he goes and tries to find Anne, he's got a gun. Yeah. He's like, "Screw the film, we gotta get her back." And that's what I like about this version of Carl Denham, and I'll get into this more when we talk about 2005, and you're probably going to disagree with me on this. He's not an asshole in this, and he's kind of greedy, but, what film director isn't greedy? I mean, we're two film directors, we're a little bit greedy. Yeah, I'm a greedy capitalist pig, according to my science teacher. But you're right, once his actress is gone, he's gonna go in and get her, and he's gonna sacrifice all his soldiers, or not soldiers, sorry, sailors. Soldiers, Well, this Carl Denham is down a Stegosaurus. Right. I mean, this Carl Denham, what has happened is he's learned to love this character, Ann Darrow. He's learned to love her. Yeah. Which he didn't think he would, much like Jack Driscoll. Oh, yeah. We'll talk about Jack in a minute, though. Obviously. Yeah. But Carl just almost treats women like a property in that first opening introduction scene with him. Like, talking about them almost like they're just another movie prop. Like, they're just almost like a part of the story that doesn't have any emotion. Like, they're just there. I love Weston. Sell more. That opening scene with Weston and Carl Denham just talking back and forth about, then why do you want to you think I want to haul a woman around all over the world? Then why? Because the public, Weston. Weston? Yeah. And then he just goes everywhere. Not really even, considering that these people might not want to do it. Like, they just think, as long as I find a woman, I'm good. Which, he goes up to the soup lines and everything, and then... Yeah. Which is one thing I like better in the 2005 version is when he finds Ann Darrow. Oh, but, it's a lot funnier and more realistic in the 2005 version. The scene where he finds Ann Darrow is so... very iconic. Yeah. It plays into, again, one of the allegories of King Kong, how fate is funny. Fate can begin as being amazing, but end in tragedy.
Which is kind of reverse for Anne, because her fate begins in tragedy and ends in success. Both versions, she ends up with Jack at the end. Well, it's more set in stone in the 33 version, but, I'm talking about 33, that her fate begins with tragedy and ends with success. Carl Denham, it's the opposite. Jack Driscoll, it's the same. Kong, death is kind of a tragedy. I don't know about you, but death is sort of tragic.
Now that we're talking about Andero, let's talk about Andero.
All right.
First off, Fay Wray.
Incredibly annoying.
What?
Her screaming gets incredibly annoying.
Yeah, not gonna lie, it does. Not gonna lie.
She's one area where the 2005 version wins. When she screams, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And she doesn't scream that often.
May I just say that Andero was my first crush?
Sure, why not?
But one of my favorite sequences that she's in terms of visual effects is when Kong is placing her on a tree trunk before the T-Rex fight. Look how at first she's a puppet, but then all of a sudden she morphs into an actual person.
Yeah, and the movie's filled with that, but it just looks cool. I mean, it's obvious, but it looks cool.
I know, because it's like, how the fuck did they do that? And then
the way they did it is just so... God, it's so original and just so cool.
Yeah, and another example of that is when that snake lizard thingy is attacking Kong, and you see Jack Driscoll in the lower right-hand corner, and you see Andero up in that cave where Kong placed her. And actually, I just want to say this really quickly. Did you notice why Kong turned away?
I never knew why.
Look carefully at what he's holding. He's picking up a flower.
Oh.
Kong, he turns away, and I learned this from Randy Cook, the second unit director on King Kong 05. Kong is turning away, and you see him, you just see it for a split second. And this just speaks to how much of a genius Willis O'Brien was, because he realized that this can't just be a monster, it needs to be a monster with emotions, that can think, that can reason. And Kong is turning around, and he's picking up a flower, and then all of a sudden Anne screams, and he immediately drops it and goes to save her. Presumably, he's going to give that flower to Anne.
Oh, good call. I didn't even notice that. That's cool. That's really clever of them. And I almost wish I caught that now, because when Kong starts taking her clothes off in the next scene, it's kind of creepy and makes Kong look bad as a character. I mean, I know he's just curious, but that definitely would have helped that, because he almost looks like a dumb brute in that scene where he's taking off her clothes, and he looks a little bit malicious, I guess would be the word. That would definitely offset that, and that again makes him a more 3D character, curious and loving.
Well, you see, that is the case. It's not cut out of the movie; it's still in the movie.
No, I know it is, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like you have to kind of look for it.
And okay, back to Andero.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I just had to say that.
I mean, the one thing I don't like about this Andero is that she never learns to love Kong.
The thing about this movie is that it wasn't really even intended to be a love story in the slightest. It was supposed to be a pure, raw horror movie. And it wasn't really considered like that Kong was supposed to be sympathetic until after the movie was like test screen.
Well, then tell me this. Why is that poem written by Marion C. Cooper, that old Arabian proverb at the beginning of the film?
Well,
if it was supposed to be a straight-up horror film.
Well, I'm not saying straight-up horror. I'm just saying, like, Kong wasn't supposed to be sympathetic in the way that he is. Like, we weren't supposed to really feel bad when he falls off the Empire State Building. And again, this is in my opinion, because I feel for him. But that wasn't the original intention. It was kind of an accident. Well, this is going from secondary sources here, I'm saying. Like, this was in an interview. Like, and...
I disagree.
Yeah, what do you mean?
I disagree.
No, I'm just saying that this is like what some guy said. I don't agree with it either, but I'm just saying, like, this is what some guy said.
I think they knew that people were going to feel for Kong towards the end.
Well, yeah, I mean... Maybe. Because
Kong walked into this and had no idea what was going to wind up happening to him. That he was going to fall in love with this girl. And again, it plays into that fate aspect. How he was going to fall into love with this girl. And because of him falling in love with this girl in order to save her, he needs to die.
Which is why he takes her up to the Empire State Building. And also, it's kind of a parallel to when he takes her up to the cavern. It's the one place where he feels like he can defend her.
Mm-hmm.
It's every version of this story. In the 76 version, the 05 version, and in each one it's handled really well. Say what you will about 76, but even that it's handled well.
Yeah.
And again, that's also what makes Kong a real 3D character. He doesn't just do it because the movie needed a climax. He does it to protect her. And it makes him more sympathetic, and it makes him more of a three-dimensional character rather than just a 2D monster that's going around destroying the city.
Yeah, one of the faults in this movie, I think, is Andero.
Yeah, and they fixed it in 05, of course.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it was just kind of a perception of the times. I mean, remember, this is the 30s, and, women were still fighting for their rights and everything. So, I mean, even then, it was still kind of like, they're just kind of there to be saved. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but I'm just saying, that was the perception of the time.
Right. Jack Driscoll, what do you think of him?
Jack Driscoll comes off as a douche right away, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who love 05 and love this movie who say they prefer Jack Driscoll in 05. And I like Adrian Brody, but the thing about this Jack Driscoll is he goes through a more clear character arc of turning from this douche into a real human who loves. He really doesn't love anything except the ship and the adventure before he meets Anne. He just comes off as this asshole who hates women and just barks orders.
Right.
And then she kind of tames him. And look, I understand why people today don't like him because he's a sexist asshole. But so is Carl Denham in the beginning. He kind of comes to his senses more quickly. But the Jack Driscoll actually falls in love with Anne. And, it's just part of his character arc. And I love this version of Jack Driscoll.
Yeah, and when reading some of the Ruth Rose's autobiography, she said that she designed Jack Driscoll and Kong to be the same character.
Yeah, they're both defending Anne.
Jack Driscoll and Kong, both macho alpha males, and then suddenly they meet Andero, and it tames them both.
She tames them both, right? And it's funny because what happens to Jack is the opposite of Kong. Kong falls and Jack rises. When I did my ZMMR in this, I brought up that all three major characters, not counting Andero, the original proverb in the beginning relates to all three of them, and in differing ways. Kong and Denham are more paralleled, but Driscoll is the opposite. He rises from the ashes. He turns from this douchey macho guy into just a loving person who finally has something to love. Kong's the same way, but he can't have it. And he dies, and that's what makes him sympathetic. And Denham's more complicated, of course, but he's pretty much the same thing. He can't have what he loves, which is, of course, that whole thing of mystifying the public. He ran out of stuff to mystify them with. Kong was his last chance. Kong broke out and ruined his chances, and he never got the chance again to have that feeling of mystifying the public.
Yeah.
And he fell.
Exactly, you just stole the words from my mouth.
So that's I love that original proverb, by the way, but again, I just like how Jack Driscoll is kind of the opposite of the rule,
And one of my favorite scenes with Jack Driscoll is when he first sees Kong through that little tiny gap in the gate.
Yeah. And his reaction's priceless.
His reaction is so priceless. Because I'm like, what the hell? How would you react to seeing a giant ape carrying the girl that you're falling in love with away into the jungle?
Yeah, right?
And then I love his acting on the scene where he's like, find Miss Darrow, and he's looking through the room, and he's like, they've taken Anne!
He's just panicking.
He is. He's fucking panicking. And it gives me chills every time I watch that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Bruce Cabot, an equally good actor. He's truly a phenomenal actor.
Yeah, he is. He makes Jack Driscoll likable even when he's being an asshole. I like that scene that his and Anne's second exchange where it's kind of deeper into the voyage and looking over the side of the ship, and they're just talking, and he's just, again, goes into his whole spiel of women don't belong on ships, but he's saying it more gently now, and
Yeah.
It's a slow character progression, and his acting is really good.
I'm going to talk about Anglehorn, Captain Anglehorn, in the 1933 version. All the characters in this movie, when comparing them to 2005, because, 2005 is the most direct remake to King Kong.
Sure.
When comparing them to King Kong, usually they're hit and miss for me. Like, I know immediately which Denham's my favorite, which Driscoll's my favorite, which Ann's my favorite. But Anglehorn is the only character that I have a hard time splitting between the '05 version and the 1933 version.
Yeah, me too.
Because both of them are just totally kick-ass characters.
Yeah. Anglehorn in '05 is a little bit more of a jerk. I don't want to say a jerk. Anglehorn in the 33 version is definitely older.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it.
Yeah. And I prefer the one from '05, but that's because of World War I just happened, and the reason why Anglehorn in '05 is such an asshole is because he's been oppressed because of World War I. The Anglehorn in the 33 version, this was a very hard decision I had to make, but the 33 version, he's just so enjoyable.
I know. He's awesome.
What do you think the Marshal will say to these gaff bombs of yours?
I also love how he just goes along with Denham. And they're both really good friends, and I just love their chemistry together.
Yeah, I know. They're just so funny. Anglehorn is better drawn out in Son of Kong, but in 33, you get enough glimpse of him that he loves everybody that he's meeting, and he's learning to love everybody.
I don't know. 33, he has less screen time. That's for sure. And again, he's less drawn out, but he's not really that integral to the themes of King Kong in the original. Really think about it, he's just there to bring them to the island. I do like his character, but the fact that he doesn't have a lot of screen time almost kind of helps his enjoyment level. Like, if he was there too much, he might get annoying.
I just love Anglehorn.
Yeah, so again, but I think it's one of those things where less is more. Same thing in '05. I love him in '05 as well, and he really doesn't have that much screen time. If he says a line, it's like everyone shuts up and just listens. He's got a really good presence.
Yeah, both versions are just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
For 1933, let's talk about some of the allegories and metaphors for the movie. I know we touched on the Roaring Twenties and Fate, but I think there's quite a few more in the movie that are just sort of subtle.
Yeah, I want to bring one up quickly, and I'm sure you were going to bring this up too, is the fall of escapist entertainment in that this was, again, as I said when we first started, is that this is kind of the final fantasy. That this is the last undiscovered place on the map, and Carl Denham wants his name on it. As he says in 2005, for a quarter you get to see the last space on the map.
For a quarter you get to see the last blank spot on the map.
Right. And it's the same thing here, except of course he doesn't say that, but it's implied that he wants to mystify the public one last time, maybe, and he wants to make this the biggest one. He realizes that a movie is not good enough. He needs to show them the real thing. So he brings Kong back with him, and that turns out to be a mistake, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's almost like an allegory on film itself. It's kind of the end of his which is funny because it kind of started it, with all the serials and everything. But everything after this that was a major film and wasn't like a serial was kind of like a drama, gangster, romance, musical kind of thing. This was kind of the last true escapist film. Again, like I said earlier, it's the Final Fantasy.
Right.
And again, final blank space on the map, and it adds so much to Denham's character. That he almost kind of represents the film industry in this.
One of the allegories that, I really love in this movie, it's sort of in your face in this movie, but a lot of people overlook it. And it's a running theme that I want to have in some of my movies too, is that love is a will leader. Once you fall in love with somebody, it's really hard for you to 100% say that you have fallen in love with somebody. And once you've fallen in love with somebody and made a commitment, you're stuck. Well, it goes back to, because this is again a more religious time, but some of it still holds to this day. Once you're married for eternity, really. But it's just sort of like how Kong fell in love with Anne. And
then fell for real. He died for her.
Yeah, to save her.
He thought he was protecting her from those planes. He dies for it, and it's, again, like you said, love is a will leader. He wouldn't have died if he would have just let her go and stayed cooped up on his island.
Another sort of metaphor or allegory in the movie, but it's subtle, is when you look at the Empire State Building and him climbing the Empire State Building, it really represents the, I'm on top of the world, nothing, I am invincible, but when something happens, you collapse. Simply that iconic view of the Empire State Building, which actually I think is something that they do good in both remakes, is that they capture that feeling of the tallest building in New York.
Yeah.
And that representing that sort of scale.
You really get the sense that you're, like, above everything else, and that's the point of King Kong. He feels that he's above everything else, and that he's taking Anne out of the real world and up into his domain.
Yeah.
And because of that, he falls from his domain and dies.
Yeah. It's just such an amazing film. So I guess just let's talk about our final thoughts on King Kong, the original 1933 one.
Again, it really is just one of the best movies ever made. Regardless of its entertainment factor, I also want to bring one last thing up.
Okay.
Films today are, this is kind of adding to my final thoughts, films today that are considered escapist films are dumb, B-grade action movies. That's what the general consensus for dumb, like, well, not dumb, but entertaining, kind of taking you out of your real life and putting you into another world kind of escapist movies are today. There's no thought behind them. They're just written to entertain you, and then you never think of them again. King Kong is how an escapist movie should be made. It is it's a smart movie, but it doesn't have to, like, bombard you with real world ideas that are, like, in your face. It's subtle in that. And it's really just a good example of how to do a really entertaining adventure movie, but still make it smart and relevant to the modern consensus and to today's consensus. Kong really represents the time it was made in, not only in its representation of the rise and fall of the stock market, but also just films of the time again. People were looking for escape, and they got it with King Kong, and they didn't even know that they were also seeing a fantastical portrayal of how their own country fell. And that's really funny, I think. And I also, that's another thing I want to get into a little more when we talk about 05.
Out of 5, what would you give this movie?
5 out of 5.
Oh yeah, easily I give it 4 out of 4. My final thoughts for this movie, it's tied for first place for my all-time favorite movie, that and the 05 version. This movie is just absolutely breathtaking. Every single time I watch this, I notice something new. It's so revolutionary on how it was done, not just in terms of visual effects, but sound design, music, writing. And it's just so beautifully well done. Some of the cinematography was revolutionary. Literally, this is one of the few cases where I can literally feel myself choking up watching this movie. Not only because it's bringing back lots of memories from my younger days, but just because of how beautifully well done it is.
Right.
It's an amazing movie. Like, words cannot describe how good this movie is.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can hear it. We're having a hard time expressing how awesome this is. Like, this, again, this is something you really have to see to believe. And this is one of those things you can't, as I said in our Planet of the Apes chat, you can't just watch the parodies and the stuff that's based on it to get the gist of it. You've got to watch the original.
Okay, so on to the first remake, made in 1976, released by Paramount.
Oh boy.
Again, this movie is sort of like Battle for the Planet of the Apes. It has good ideas. It's not unwatchable. Like, I'm just going to say right now, I give the movie 3 out of 4. But, it's hit and miss. It's a severe case of hit and miss.
I said this to you before we started recording. I don't hate it when a lot of people do. I hate the premise. It's kind of like taking what was there with the original King Kong and sucking out all the allegory.
Yeah, and you know what I find funny is that this is it suddenly is building up like a huge cult fanfare. Like, there are people who are literally like die-hard Kong 76 fans that prefer this one over all the other ones.
But you're not one of them, or two of them.
Yeah, I'm not one of them. But it's just really funny.
Yeah. And again, I don't hate this movie. It's not without merit. I like the effects, but I guess we'll get into that a little later. But again, I hate the premise.
Yeah.
I don't like the whole oil thing. I know it's a little more modern, but it's bullshit, obvious attempt at allegory that's not really allegorical.
Yeah.
It's not commenting anything, it's just there. In most cases, it's just there to get them to the island. And the island itself is just really down. It's like really disappointing. It's not even like that mystifying. The only mystical thing about it is the goddamn fog, which is pulled off really well. I like the whole...
Yeah, and again, it's like another case of those hits and misses. It has some really good, genuine moments in the movie. Jeff Bridges, one of the greatest actors of all time, does an amazing job in this movie.
Yeah, his performance saves it for me. If he turned in a bad performance, I would hate this movie.
Yeah.
He really saves it for me. I recently didn't like Jessica Lange's performance.
Oh, I still don't like her.
I originally didn't hate it. Now I do. She's more of an airhead than Ann Darrow was in the original.
I know, she's like, hi, like the entire time.
I know, right? Like, she just comes back from a near-death experience. Hi, everybody, I'm alive.
I know, this is her first movie, so I mean, I can see why she's...
No, I know, but...
Because in other movies that she's played in, she's done a phenomenal job. I don't know if this is because of the director's point of view or because of the screenwriting, because the director who made this was a pretty well-known director at the time. Like, he's most famous for a war movie called The Bridge at Remagen, which is one of the greatest war movies ever made, and truly one of the most tragic. But the guy who directed this, he really is a great director.
Yeah, well, the directing's not bad. The directing's actually quite good.
And the cinematography's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Let's not get started on John Barry's epic score.
Yeah, it's also very well done. If you know John Barry's work, if you know James Bond, you're a John Barry music fan.
Yeah.
He scored... I don't think he scored all of them.
He didn't score all of them, but he scored Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger.
That's what I think of when I think of John Barry. The thing about 76 is that, again, I hate the premise, and the execution of the premise is kind of what saves it, because it allows for space for more creepy moments. One of my favorite, by far actually my favorite scene in the film, doesn't even have Kong in it. It's 15 minutes in, where they're sitting in that conference room talking about where they're going.
Jeff Bridges, Jack Prescott, he's like, he got talking about like an upright humanoid creature.
Yeah, where he's talking about how there was a canoe that came into one of the ships, and written in blood in the side of the canoe was a warning. And I forgot what that was. Something about don't pierce the white veil, which was, of course, referring to the fog. Then, of course, that slouched humanoid being, which is, of course, Kong. It really just shows how much we can do now with talking and not showing things. It's a really well done scene, and the room is nicely. The lighting is great in that scene. Really, The only light present is the light of the projection, and it's really cool.
Yeah. You know, I want to talk about the natives for 1 minute. I really don't like the natives in this, because I don't think by 1976 they would be there.
No, and it doesn't make any sense. 05 explained its natives amazingly.
Yeah, and I mean, in my version, my Godzilla and King Kong movie, there aren't any natives. They all died out. And so all that's left is the remnants of the civilization that they created. There is one thing, though, with the natives that I did like, and that is when they're sacrificing Dwan, which was basically Ann Darrow.
Well, they just mixed the names. I forget what her last name was.
I don't even think we know her last name. All I know is it's Dwan.
Yeah.
And I just love, like, it was being faithful to the original while adding something to it. And again, John Barry's amazing film score just added tons to it.
That is one of the scenes that has the best, again, lighting, the greatest cinematography. Just like when she wakes up and the cameras just start slowly shaking, and you're wondering what's going on, then you see that she's being carried off towards where she's going to be sacrificed.
Yeah, and then how they keep Kong a mystery, but then all of a sudden reveal him. Again, it's being faithful to the original, but...
That scene scared me when I was a kid.
It is scary, and it looks so good.
I know.
Rick Baker did the visual effects for it.
Terror of Mechagodzilla, but this blows its suit effects out of the water.
Yeah, Rick Baker worked on it, and just bringing up 05 quickly, Rick Baker played one of the tail gunners on the 05 version on King Kong. Cool. Yeah. So he basically got to kill himself.
Did we bring up when we talked about 33 that Ernest Schoedzak and Marion Cooper played the two gunners?
Oh, we didn't bring that up. Oh, shit. Well, we'll bring that up with 05, because it plays a bigger role in 05.
Right, okay. So we'll bring that up later. I despise when Kong gets shot down. I don't know. For some reason, it angers me.
You don't like that? Well, okay, I kind of do, too. I don't like how they show him falling off and how when he hits the ground, he's still alive.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know he was still alive until the sequel.
No. His heart is still beating when he hits the ground, remember?
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Which I actually kind of stole that. I stole that and put it on my Attack Godzilla, where it has close-ups on Godzilla's eyes and his heart slowly stops. But anyways, personally, I love that scene.
Maybe it's just me being a purist. I hate the helicopters. I don't know why.
Well, remember, I thought it was creative how they were taking. I was sort of in a way happy when I first watched it that it wasn't in 1933. But
I don't know.
The thing with this movie was it was trying to reintroduce Kong to a modern day audience, but it failed.
Well, this movie was popular.
Well, yeah, but it failed at telling the story of Kong.
Yeah, I know. And I almost kind of have reservations to call this a remake now. I know it's supposed to be. But it's almost more of a reimagining, because it's not... Remake mostly means that you take the exact same premise and just do your own little tweaks, and that's
this is more of a reimagining.
Yeah, this is more of a reimagining. If you look at the opening credits, it says based on a story. No, based on an idea by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest Schoedzak. And they don't even say that it's based on the same screenplay. 05 does.
Yeah.
It's just based on the premise, or not the premise, the idea of Kong, Beauty and the Beast. And what I really hate about this movie is that it sucks all the allegory out and just puts in the basic story, and that's where it kind of falls on its ass.
Right.
That's where it starts to get bad, because there's nothing there to make you think about it.
Right.
I can't think of one time I've watched this movie and thought about it afterwards of like what it meant. I
remember replaying the music in my head several times. Like, again, the music was like the only thing that I can 100% say is amazing.
Well, it's John Barry.
It's John Barry. But, you know, just some of the scene where the scene where Jack Prescott saves Dwan and is running towards the island, and the music, if you listen to the music, it slowly is building up. And so when all of a sudden, for the first time, Fred Wilson, basically this movie's Carl Denham, sees Kong, and the music's just like, BOOM! And you just see it, I'm like, oh, it gave me chills up my spine.
Yeah, and the music is another thing that saves it. Okay, so what are we saying here? That music saves it, and so does
the directing, the cinematography, and the cinematography and the music saves it. Because honestly, Kong, in my opinion, on this movie is hit and miss. Some scenes he looks absolutely amazing, but then other scenes he looks like a man in a gorilla suit.
Right. Not even that. His characterization is all over the place. He goes from just piss off angry to calm. Well,
this Kong is supposed to be the gorilla. It's supposed to be a gorilla.
Yeah, but I know, but well, so was 33.
Yeah, but this movie's Kong, and it changes size constantly.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. One thing I always like to point to is when Kong is towering over a bunch of buildings, almost the size of Godzilla. And then on the island, not so much.
Yeah, not so much.
And I also don't like the scene where they both wake up for the first time and he just goes piss off angry again for no reason.
Yeah.
Again, this version of Kong is just all over the place, and it's really just kind of off-putting, especially if you've seen the original. where it's a slow progression.
Yeah.
And of course, 05 mastered it. This version of Kong is getting all over the place. It's hit and miss. And I'm going to quote Fred Wilson here. He comes off as a rapist.
He's a rapist, honey. That line makes me laugh.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Dwan is like, but he did this, it did that. But then all of a sudden, he just repeats it. He's a rapist, honey.
He tried to rape you, sweetie.
Yeah, he tried to rape you. I mean, some of the dialogue is funny.
Yeah. I do like Fred Wilson as kind of comic relief, but otherwise, he's just a piss-poor imitation of Carl Denham.
Yeah, Fred Wilson, he's the overtop villain. Jeff Bridges is, of course, Jeff Bridges. He's the dude. And then Dwan sucks.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I love the captain, Captain Ross. I like him in this because
he's very understated.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is when Kong just bursts through the wall and he's about to step into that brilliantly well laid out trap. Which honestly, I love the trap.
Oh yeah, that's very clever. It's a nice way to get rid of the whole gas bomb thing.
Yeah, and that's how they capture Kong in my version. They dig a giant pit and then cover it.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
But I love how all of a sudden he goes, "Don't just stand there like a fucking idiot. Drop the goddamn chloroform."
Did he say fucking?
Yeah, he did.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I never heard that. I saw that movie recently too. It was a couple weeks ago. For me, this movie falls apart after the first 15 minutes, and that's where I first said to myself, "This is a bad movie."
Yeah, right.
After that scene in the conference room, once Dwan shows up, I get bored. Until Kong shows up.
No, Dwan's boring.
She is, and it's really a shame. I do like how we get less screen time of her, and we get more screen time of the guys trying to save her. Because again,
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it detracts from Kong's screen time as well. But again, he's not even that great in this movie as it is anyway. So,
which another thing that I really don't like about this movie: there is no dinosaurs.
Oh, we have to get into this now. It is just horrible. Again, it sucks all the allegory and fantasy out of it. This is not a fantastical world. It's a fucking rock.
I know. I don't.
With a snake and a gorilla on it.
Yeah.
So, that fucking giant snake shows up out of nowhere.
You need dinosaurs, god damn it.
Well, I'm gonna bring this up real quick. 33 established dinosaurs on the island with the Stegosaurus first, then the Brontosaurus, and then the T-Rex. It was a slow progression. You were introduced to them. The snake is just like, oh, here's a snake.
I know,
because we don't
right?
have dinosaurs in this movie, so here's a snake.
I know. In the first movie, it's so well done how they introduced the Stegosaurus.
Yeah.
In this movie, it's not.
It's just the snake slithers into frame randomly. Kong breaks its neck.
But again, the music saves the scene for me.
He doesn't even break it; it rips its head off.
I know, and the music saves the scene for me.
Well, the music saves the whole movie.
This movie is not unwatchable.
No, it's not. I know, but it's still bad. It's not okay. I'm gonna come down on it as not terrible, but bad. Because it's just kind of like, again, it sucks all the allegory out of the story, which pissed me off.
It falls into the bleh category.
Yeah, that's why I think I can justify it as a bad movie, because it sucks all the originality, themes, and characterization out of the original, and just puts in this bleh mediocrity.
Yeah.
So I mean, is there anything else is there anything else you want to say? Because I'm kind of...
I do. I want to talk about the ending with him fighting off the helicopters. Because Peter Jackson has been quoted on saying Kong should not get bloody.
It's at 33.
Yeah, well, Kong does get bloody in the 05 version too, but Peter Jackson didn't want it to be bloody. Because Weta Workshop actually had quite a bit of blood on Kong, but then Peter Jackson said no because he thought it detracts from Kong's character. Personally, I think the blood would add more.
Well, the thing about 05 and 33 is that they're more fantasy.
Yeah, But I mean,
and 76 is more just like a realistic or pseudo-realistic just kind of movie that's not really thinking about what it's showing.
Yeah.
33 shows blood, but it's not a lot because, of course, it's 1933.
Yeah. But, you know, I just love it because, in my opinion, remember, this is in my opinion, and I'm defending the movie here. I think that adding the blood just shows how Kong thought he was immortal, but he is. He is mortal.
But I didn't get that from this version of Kong. I didn't feel like he thought he was this big, like macho, Lord of the Jungle kind of character. He doesn't have any competition.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, like at least in my King Kong, my Godzilla and King Kong, he does have competition.
Varan.
Yeah, Varan.
And in 33 he's got dinosaurs. In King Kong vs. Godzilla, he's got Godzilla.
And the giant octopus.
and the giant octopus. Escaped, he's got Gorosaurus. It's just all the other ones showed that he earned the title of King Kong.
Right.
In this, it's just he's the only thing big enough there to call himself that, so why not?
Yeah.
The lack of dinosaurs does hurt this movie, but I think I know why they're not there. Because of it being pseudomation, it would be hard to pull off normal dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Without them looking suspiciously like Godzilla.
I know, and I was put off by the suitmation. Because, I'd think that they want to add to the visual effects, but it's almost like they downgraded. Suitmation's easy.
Yeah, I mean, but the animatronics in Kong's face.
Yeah, they are pretty good. But,
The body, not so much. When he's getting shot, it looks pretty bad.
Yeah. But,
when the blood just starts flying out of the suit.
I love how Kong... The entire ending scene I really love because of the sound effects. Now, there's music, but then all of a sudden it stops when the helicopter starts shooting at him. And one of the most chilling scenes on this, and it's one of the only times where I actually like Dwan's character, is when she's screaming, "Don't kill him," but you can just barely hear her, but she's screaming to the top of her lungs.
Yeah. Also, I like it when she tries to get back in Kong's hand.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And Kong just keeps pushing her away.
Yeah. That's one of the moments where I was like, wow, this is working. This is a King Kong movie. That's what I said to myself.
Once it arrives on New York, I feel like it's a King Kong movie.
Once they get off the island, it slowly starts to redeem itself, but then it doesn't have time to finish that off when the helicopters come in. And again, this is one of those few times when I talk about a movie where I'm just going to have to say, the fact that I'm a huge fan of the original put me off that this was modern times. I'm sorry. Can I be granted one time where I'm just going to have to throw up my hands and say I'm just going to be a fanboy about this and say I don't like it?
No, go ahead.
Alright, yeah. I have to say it in this case that it really just bugged me because I'm a fanboy.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm going to say this, like, right now. There needs to be a balance between Kong being... Well, in 33, Kong and Andero, not a good relationship. In this one, it's a really creepy relationship.
Again, rapist.
And then 05, it's...
05 is just Oscar-worthy.
Yeah. Oscar-worthy relationship. But, this movie, I hate how Dwan is like, no, don't do it. Don't do it, Kong. No, don't do it.
Yeah.
It just bugs me.
It's a rape relationship.
I know.
Do you have anything else to say on that? Because I'm going to go into another kind of, not really, it doesn't really relate to that point.
I don't know, just how many stars would you give it out of 5?
Oh, this is going to be tough. I don't hate it. I'm going to have to give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah, you see, mine's a very...
That's kind of an in-between score for me.
Yeah. Like, mine's a very weak 3 out of 4.
Yeah. I would say watch it if you're looking for a good monster movie, like something just to entertain you. Don't look at it as a King Kong movie if you're a fan of the original, because you will hate it.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to get into, it's just kind of an amusing anecdote. The funny thing about this version of Kong is that it's probably got, aside from Andy Serkis, it's probably got the most human connections of all the Kongs, because not only is there a guy in the suit, but there's a guy doing all the roaring and voices, except for that, stock roar that I can't imitate because I'll kill myself doing it. Kong is voiced by Peter Cullen, who you may also know as Optimus Prime. And very infamously, he was in a recording session for 7 hours doing Kong's grunts and everything, and actually started bleeding out of his mouth.
Oh, I didn't know that. Jesus.
Yeah. He was sitting in the sound booth. They wouldn't let him go home until he finished his workload, and he actually started bleeding from the mouth and had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So yeah, sleep with that, kids. No, but it's just it kind of I don't know. It kind of hurts the movie for me a little bit because I like Peter Cullen. But otherwise, it's just kind of there for amusing anecdote. Yeah. I just brought it up because I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And a little sad. Otherwise, though, I don't hate this movie, but it's not a good movie. I cannot give it above 2.5.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enough of 76. On to my all-time favorite movie, next to 33, Peter Jackson's 2005 remake.
Indeed. I saw this movie opening day.
I saw this movie when it played up here, and as soon... I'm going to tell the story, because this is a story and I'm sticking with it. I was in 5th grade when I watched it, and I went to the theater because, King Kong was already my favorite film. But when I went to theaters, and I went to see this with my parents, and this was one of the cases where I was bawling my eyes out the entire time watching it. And when I left, I remember looking at a poster of King Kong, and I said, this is what I want to do for a living. And it's still stuck with me since. My parents are very skeptical, saying how I wouldn't really want to be a director for a long time. But now it's over 5 years later, and I'm still making movies and shit like that.
Yeah.
This movie, every single time I watch it, I get choked up. I don't care what anybody says. This movie is, in my opinion, the definition of... Well, it's not... No movie's perfect, but in my opinion, this movie is as close to perfect as anybody can get. All the performances in this movie, no matter how small or how big, are just all extremely well executed. This movie is a great deal of adding sort of escapism, and it also has a few comedy moments in it to lighten up the tension, to really sad and touching moments, to really quiet moments, to sort of allow you as a person in the audience to breathe. This movie is amazing. And people make fun of me all the time for saying it's my favorite film at school. To this day, one of my friends still makes fun of me because I told him I cry every time I watch this movie. This movie is literally the film that made me want to be what I wish to do. This movie is what introduced me to the world of directing. And this is, again, the reason why Peter Jackson is my all-time favorite director. So there, I got my little spiel out of the way.
Alright, I saw it in 6th grade, because I'm a year older than you.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit more... Here, I had enormous expectations, because I got the video game the day it came out, and the video game came out quite a bit before the film, and I guess it was because the story was quite a bit different in the game. And I know the game is, I believe, you said it's your favorite game of all time before, right?
Yeah, it used to be, yeah.
Well, yeah, it used to be mine too.
It's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, oh yeah, me too. And the video game set up the expectations for me, that this was going to be awesome. This was going to be one of the best movies I've ever seen. And one of the few times I've ever went to the movie theater, it didn't disappoint. I'll throw out a couple of examples of movies that I built up huge expectations for that disappointed me. Right off the bat, Godzilla 98. I won't get into why, but yeah, that.
I think it disappointed all G fans.
Sure, yeah. Terminator Salvation.
Yeah, I don't like that movie.
Disappointed. I liked it when I first saw it, not so much anymore. What else? Star Wars Episode 2.
Same here.
I like it better now, actually, than I did when I first saw it, but I was very disappointed when I first saw it.
The few people that are loyal to my page already know how much I despise Avatar, but Avatar, I went into the theaters with a huge expectation, and it let me down completely. Yeah,
that too also let me down a little bit, but not quite as much as, maybe not, I don't hate that movie as much as everyone else does, but, anyway, back to King Kong. This was one of the few times where not only were my expectations met, but they were exceeded. For a long time, I preferred this over the original. Not so much anymore, but when I first saw it, I was just completely blown away by just how original a remake could be. How much it could add to the original. This is just hands down best remake of a movie ever.
I know, and one of the reasons why I like this movie so much, again, other than all the reasons why I stated before, but this movie already takes a full developed story and adds to it.
Yeah. As much as this is a remake, I almost see it as a companion piece to the original. Like, it's almost there to add to what was already there. And it still stands fine on its own, but it's so much more, it's a much more better film, I think, if you are a King Kong fan like us. And it just adds so much more to the experience. This was the version I showed my cousin, because she wanted to see a King Kong movie, and she refused to watch the original. So I showed her this, and it made her cry, and that's what, and that was the first time I ever actually saw someone cry at Kong's death. I might have the first time I saw the original. I don't remember. Again, it was so long ago. I don't really remember. But again, this is just really, really good, and it's just so surprising that a remake could be this good.
Yeah,
there's very few contenders with it.
I guess the first thing we could talk about is the ending. One of the things that I found interesting, because I have the extended director's cut version, which also comes with a 3-hour documentary on the making of the movie. And Peter Jackson said when he watched for the first time, and it was just a quickie thing, they showed him that view of the Empire State Building with Kong climbing up the Empire State Building. It's this really long pan shot. And the music goes dun 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 dun, and it's this really long. It's this really long pan shot, and Peter Jackson said he had a tear come out of his eye, but he had to clear it up quickly because he had to go and direct a few scenes. If it could make the director choke up, what is this going to do to the audience? Because I remember as soon as that shot came up, I started crying. Like, I could not hold in the tears anymore. Like, there were, like, tears and snot coming out of my nose. I remember having to blow my nose several times. Like, I was just bawling my eyes out. Because this is a character that was already developed in the original version, but is so much more well-developed in this version and much more sympathetic in this version.
Yeah,
and,
oh God.
And I mean, going into this movie, I already know what's going to happen to him. but you don't want to see it
doesn't matter, though. This is one of those cases where the journey is better than the eventual turnout. I mean, not saying the ending's bad. I'm just saying that this is one of those movies where, regardless of the ending, it's the journey that counts. Getting to the island, exploring the island, going through 30s New York. I mean, geez.
Just a little bit of...
This is a reverse 33 in that we're trying to escape from our modern time back to 33. And this film is more of a period piece, obviously, than the original. This really is a period piece in every sense of the word. It totally recreates the time period. It shows why the time period was not only good, but also bad. And that's what's beautiful about it. This really is one of the most beautifully shot movies I've ever seen. Hands down, best recreation of a past time period I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And Peter Jackson, working on Lord of the Rings, set up his ability to create massive sets that look convincing and really suck you into a world.
Yeah. Which, in an interview with Peter Jackson, people normally presume that Lord of the Rings was his like dream in life to direct, and he openly says it was not. It was this. It was King Kong.
But yeah, this was the movie that he always jokes that he started making his remake of King Kong back when he was 12.
Yeah, so same here. I'm going to do this after we talk about Kong 05, but it's actually a really cool story. What I just want to say, in terms of character of Kong, my favorite scene where you really connect with Kong is when Ann Darrow, to save her own skin, is doing all these like vaudeville dances, and Kong is just laughing, and all of a sudden he keeps pushing her down, and it's hurting her. And eventually she says no.
Yeah,
and Kong flips shit. But then all of a sudden a rock hits him, and he's embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this like really sort of quiet music starts playing, and all you hear is Kong breathing. And you look at Andy Serkis's eyes, who played Kong, which I don't know if you know this, but he also played Caesar. And
yeah, I did know that.
And all of a sudden Kong's looking around, and if you look in his eyes, it's almost immediately that you notice that Kong now knows that he's been tamed.
Yeah. And then also I love the shot after he's fought the three V-Rexes, not T-Rexes, V-Rexes. And he walks away from her initially.
Yeah.
And then she runs to him and just puts her on his shoulders.
Which is a gorilla thing, actually. It's a gorilla thing, actually, because what gorillas do is they throw their babies up on their shoulders, or like a baby up on their shoulder, and walk around with it.
Yeah. And
so that's what she was doing there. Or that's what Kong was doing there to Anne. Another scene where it shows not only like what gorillas do, but a great scene of characterization for Kong and Anne is when Kong first reunites with Anne in New York. First off, there's that breathtaking music playing, and then all of a sudden, when Kong's about ready to pick her up, it's almost like Kong doesn't want to believe that it's her, because he's in this totally new world, and he's lost. He's, again, like in my Godzilla and King Kong, he's the lost immigrant. And he's looking around, and he starts making like this really low grunt noise. And that is a noise that gorillas make when... it's usually before the pack is about to go to bed, and it's somewhat of a sign to say, I'm okay, are you okay, everyone's okay. And God, that scene is just so...
And then she walks through all the car fumes and just the mist of the 30s New York, and you can just, again, as you said, he doesn't want to believe it's her because he just spent like a whole 10 minutes killing imitations.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that's in all three. I failed to bring this up when we talked about 76. That movie also has, the scene where Kong is digging through people looking for Anne, and sees all these people who look like her.
Because Anne is truly his only salvation.
Right. And my problem with 76, and also kind of in 33, is that it's almost there for comedy, and it's here for drama. Kong just starts breathing heavy like he's fucking panicking in this. He can't find her.
And if you watch it, what I like is that Ann Darrow is in love with Kong, and not with Jack Driscoll at this point, because she is extremely pissed off at Jack Driscoll for taking her away from Kong and letting Carl Denham do what he did to Kong during that scene, which again is just another great scene, was when Kong just gets chloroformed and he's holding out his hand towards Anne, just saying, climb it. He's like, just climb in my hand just once more. Just once more,
he thought he was going to die.
And then all of a sudden, Ann Darrow looks away. And then it speaks so much more to that scene where Kong is dying, and Ann Darrow is holding on to his
same shot.
Is holding onto his finger, but this time she isn't looking away. I'm getting choked up thinking about this scene. Like, I'm like legitly getting choked up right now. But she's holding, and then all of a sudden when Kong falls, she stands up, and she's like, I could go over too right now. Because she's literally a character that's lost everything.
Yeah.
And then Jack Driscoll, of course, comes over.
Again, back to the original theme of the 33 version, rising from the ashes with her as well. But in here, she kind of falls with Kong. And that's what's cool.
Yeah, she'll never be the same.
Yeah.
And this is what I like about this version. I mean, the reason none of the characters are going to be, like in the 33 King Kong, you can tell some of the characters are going to be the same. In this version, no one's going to be the same.
Yeah. I mean, the main cast, no one was the same. Englehorn's life changed. Well, again, this is more what you see in Son of Kong. Englehorn's life changed, Denham's life fell, and Driscoll and Ann got married.
Then everybody else died.
Right. I mean, Charlie's life changed.
Choi. Oh god, Choi is so cool.
Yeah.
I guess
his life changed.
Yeah, I know. He's dead.
No, he's in Son of Kong.
Oh, not in King Kong, remember.
Yeah.
Charlie is Choi in 33.
Right.
I mean, in 05 and 33. Anyways, so I guess let's talk about the elephant in the room, as you would put it. Carl Denham. And I actually
have to bring this up. We were both getting along so well with this review.
I am going to say it, and I'm probably going to lose a subscriber or get some hate mail and get a dislike for this, but I think Carl Denham in this movie, I like him better in this movie than I do in 33.
And this is where the disagreements begin. I don't, but I do like Jack Black's performance. I'm going to quote a reviewer who I forget I don't think it was Roger Ebert. It might have been, though.
Because Robert Ebert loved this movie.
Who said this? Or someone else, I forget.
Robert Ebert loved this movie.
I agree with this. Well, Roger Ebert loved this movie as well. That whenever Jack Black delivers some of Carl Denham's iconic lines, except for the last line, sounds a little awkward. Millionaire's Boys, I'll share it with all of you, don't like his delivery.
I do.
I don't. He just sounds so subdued. He doesn't sound energetic enough. That's my problem with this Carl Denham. I don't like this whole thing where he's just almost... He looks more greedy in this than he does excited and just like he wants to impress the public. He just comes off as money grabbing. And I'm sure you're going to disagree with me on this, but I like 33 Carl Denham better because he's not just there for the money. That's part of it, sure, but he's there to impress the public. I don't get that with this Carl Denham. He just comes off as a guy in a suit to me. Maybe I'm not looking into it enough. That might just be me, but I really don't
think you are looking into it enough. But of course, you're probably going to stick on this opinion anyways. Here's why I like this Carl Denham. This Carl Denham is a person who has gotten shit his entire life. This person has had to literally claw his way into where he is now. And now that he's in this position, studios fucking hate him. Because they, according to him, say he's good for stock footage and nothing else. And he wants to prove to himself that he is a good director. And unfortunately, while doing this, more studios are getting pissed off at him. And here, he's like, this is my last chance. If I can succeed in this, then this means that I could be remembered. I can be a household name. Which is something different, completely different. These Carl Denhams are completely different in the 1933 version and this version. In the 1933 version, Carl Denham's already a household name. This movie, he isn't.
Right, but I like his fall better. He falls from that position just like Kong. In this, I don't get that. In the 2005 version, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. I don't hate this Carl Denham. I prefer 33. And the fact that I was a fan of 33 when I saw this kind of added to my, less liking of his performance. Again, I like Jack Black in this movie, but I don't like the whole changing his attitude. I don't like how he's greedy.
I do.
I know you do.
Which actually, you haven't seen the extended.
Maybe we can debate a little bit on this one scene. Maybe this would be a good jumping on point for our debate. You know the scene where they're being chased by the Vistatosauruses, and his cameraman Herb hands him up the camera, and it almost seems like he's just trying to pull up the tripod. I get conflicting emotions on this when he finally pulls it up. Like, it looked to me like he was just trying to save the tripod, but then he looks genuinely hurt when Herb dies. And it adds a third dimension to him, like he's not just greedy, but...
Okay, I'm sorry. Were you completely tuning out what he was saying?
What?
Were you completely tuning out what he was saying to Herb?
Well, he said pull you up, but it didn't look like he meant it.
Yeah, he did. Herb was his, number 2 dude. And Herb also had a fake leg. Herb had a fake leg. And...
Yeah, got by a sea lion.
Yeah. And... Carl Denham is not just... Carl Denham realizes that pulling up the tripod, and if you look at it, he doesn't have the tripod with him anymore. He's trying to pull up the tripod because he realizes that this is the best way I can save Herb.
Right, I don't know. I know what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I don't know. But that was the one part in the movie where I was genuinely put off by this version of Carl Denham. I don't know. I still prefer 33. But again, I think this is a good scene for our debate because it kind of, that's where that version of Carl Denham comes out to me, and that's where it comes out to you in two different ways.
What happens is, in this Carl Denham has a moral compass, unlike in the 1933 version. This one, unfortunately, because he wants to get such good footage, and he so wants to get himself known, which is one reason why I love him, is because I empathize with him more. There is a scene that would help my cause a lot more, but unfortunately you haven't seen the extended director's cut version, so I can't bring it up.
Why? What scene are you speaking of?
There's a scene where the sailors are crossing a bog, and they get attacked by a giant creature while on these rafts. And Carl Denham sees Herb is about... not Herb. Preston, one of my favorite characters in the movie, is about to get killed, or eaten by the monster, and he picks up a Tommy gun and shoots at the creature to save Preston.
Right.
Doesn't show that he's a complete greedy asshole, but
I know, but I didn't say he was. I'm just saying that. Well, again, as I said, it adds a third dimension to him in that one scene where I was talking about before. But I don't know. I still don't like that. I don't know.
And then I love how you put how you thought he was kind of sad, or he was sort of subdued when he was saying the eighth wonder of the world line.
Yeah, he was.
I don't think he was. And the reason why he's acting like that is because he isn't sure with himself that he just did what he just did. And he's sort of in awe on the fact that he's done this. He never thought in a million years that he would be able to do such a thing, but he's done it. And he's sort of trying to cope with himself, like, oh God, did I just do this? I think I just did this.
Yeah, I get that as well. But again, I don't like the whole thing that he wasn't that established director already. I think it adds more to him that he was and he fell. And I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. I'm just saying I don't like that compared to 33. Not comparing to 33 for a second. I love it. It's great.
Jack Black should have won an Oscar.
I do like it. But what we were talking about is that comparing them. Not comparing them I do like it. Just not as much.
And then, again, I'm going to talk about Carl Denham's last line. It was beauty killed the beast. So much better pulled off.
Yeah, that's where I agree with you. The thing about 33, and we brought this up earlier, but I guess we'll elaborate it more here, is that in 33 he says it almost like he knew it all along, but that's not the point. He didn't know it all along. And he acts like he does. That's a misread. And in 33, in 2005, he sounds like he just learned it for himself. Like it's almost like an epiphany. I love it.
And I love his eyes.
Yeah, he just looks shocked.
And another reason why I love this Carl Denham even more is because this Carl Denham actually, by the end, sort of realizes what he's done and how, because of his greediness, or whatever, however you would word it, he's destroyed a perfectly good and sacred life. And it looks like he's about ready to cry because he finally gets it.
Yeah. And I also like you don't see him a lot in between where Kong rips apart the theater to then. Because he almost seems disconnected to it, and I like that.
Yeah.
And then when he finally shows up again, it's like, oh, geez, he looks shocked. And I like that. Again, like we said earlier, we were going to disagree on this movie from the get-go, so...
Yeah. God damn, I just love Jack Black as Carl Denham. At first, I thought it was going to be the worst casting choice ever, but then I watched it, and I was totally blown away by it, so...
What put me off was I saw a trailer for Nacho Libre before I saw this movie, and I was like, oh, that's going to be Carl Denham.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's like, I don't know how that's going to turn out. It turned out well.
Yeah.
Again, I prefer Robert Armstrong, but I already stated my reasons. So, Adrian Brody. We haven't talked about him yet.
Yeah, I like the Jack Driscoll better in the 33 version, but...
I don't know why they changed him to a screenwriter. It doesn't
because they wanted to make a more... In the audio commentary with Peter Jackson, he wanted to make it a more in-your-face... this is a person who really couldn't lead an army of ants, but then has to save the person he loves.
Sure. Okay, that's true.
Because in the 33 version, which is something I like, he's the anti-Kong. He's the complete opposite of Kong. Until the ending. And then, you know...
Adrian Brody's a little bit... at least on the ship. He's a little bit bored, it sounds like. I like that one line, though, where he says, actors, the only light they see is through a mirror. Love that line. Here's where Adrian Brody, his performances start to kind of fall apart. Him and Naomi Watts have zero chemistry. It really puts me off. That first scene where they're in that hallway, I don't like it. It's too awkward.
That's what it was supposed to be, though. It's supposed to be awkward.
I know, but why? I don't get it.
Because they don't have chemistry. And then, through experiences, they do. They form chemistry.
They never gain the chemistry, though. Not to me.
Well, they do to me.
In what scene?
In, the scene where he is, right after they shot that scene, Aiken to, maybe Aiken. I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the scene where, in the 1933 version, where Jack Driscoll, says, and Daryl's like, I've never been on a ship before, and then Jack Driscoll's like, I've never seen a woman before, and they're shooting it with, like it was supposed to be in the movie. And then all of a sudden she walks by him, and he was like, you were great. He wasn't that great, but you were great. And you just see through their eyes that they're starting to get it with each other. And also, she was a huge fan of Jack Driscoll's writing.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. But then I don't know. And then I just don't like how... Actually, I do like the scene, actually. Okay. I like the scene where she confuses the sound guy with
That's
him.
funny.
It's hilarious. And she says, like, the Tweety twerp with his nose in his book. I like that. But I just don't think they have any chemistry. And then once they get off the boat, they don't have any screen time together.
Well, one of my favorite lines, or series of lines in a movie is, you did, and Jack Driscoll's like, you did great. And she's like, I was nervous. And she starts walking away, but then all of a sudden Jack Driscoll goes, and you don't have to be nervous. And then she sort of slowly turns around and walks away. I
don't know. I still didn't get that they were romantically inclined. And it almost comes off as creepy to me, like she's almost creeped out by it. It looks like she's got that face, like a fake smile, like, yeah, thanks, and then she turns around. I don't know, it almost looked like she was creeped out by it.
Not to me.
And then
her face to me looked like she was starting to get it. And again, I just want to play into that scene, the scene where Carl Denham first runs into Naomi Watts and Darrow.
Oh, I love that.
Is so amazing. All of a sudden, he's looking at all the porn star pictures, and then all of a sudden, he sees her reflection.
I also like how she crushes the paper and walks away. Clearly starting her character arc of, I'm not going to be this damsel in distress, and she's the one who tames Kong.
Yeah.
That's when I. This version of Aunt Darrow is the three-dimensional character.
Yeah, again, I love this Aunt Darrow more than the one in 33.
Me too.
But, you know, one of the things that my father doesn't like about this movie is that there's not enough screaming. And honestly, I think it adds to the movie, because she screams... Aunt Darrow screams way too much in the 33 version.
Absolutely. And then when she does scream in this, it's really, like, kind of bone-chilling and awesome.
I know. Like the first scene where she's picked up by Kong and screams, and then all of a sudden Jack Driscoll's like, behind the wall! She's behind the wall! And that music starts playing. Oh, yeah. It gave me chills. And especially listening to it in theaters, and you heard it, like, echo off of the walls.
Yeah. And then there's that also iconic scene now where she screams in the village, and then you hear Kong's roar in the distance, and everyone shuts up.
Yeah.
Oh, God, it's so good.
Tore Kong!
Everyone just starts running around, yeah. So we already talked about Englehorn, so who else?
There's... Oh my god, I need to talk about this guy. Oh shit, oh fuck.
Bruce Baxter?
No.
Bruce Baxter.
Andy Serkis. Lumpy!
I just said his name.
Lumpy! He's so awesome. He's
so
the dentist, barber, cook, doctor,
yeah,
gun specialist,
badass.
He's so funny. And one of my favorite scenes is when he's shooting the giant mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And he's like, conserve your ammunition. Then he just gives him like a dirty look and shoots one off of a tree. It was so funny.
Oh my god, Hayes. We have to talk about Hayes.
Oh yeah, Hayes. He is a cool guy.
And Jimmy.
Oh yeah, their relationship is tragic.
Yes, very much so. I almost like Hayes better in the video game. Because he gets more things to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, same here. But in the director's cut, there's a scene where it establishes that Hayes was a World War I vet that basically got screwed because he was black. And that's why he's very much like the hatred person.
I like how that doesn't come up, though, in the movie. I'm sure it adds some to the director's cut. I don't know. When I saw it in theaters, I was like, I really hope they don't bring up that he's black. Please don't bring up that he's black. And they don't.
No, he never brings up the fact that he was black, but you sort of get it because...
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Because he was... Adrian Brody's walking, and he's like, oh, man, I bet you got tons of rewards for that. And he looks at Jack Driscoll and says, we didn't get a damn thing. And keeps on walking.
They have great chemistry, him and Hayes. It's almost like Hayes passes on the badass torch to him when he dies. Which
is a very sad scene.
And because then you get that long scene where Jimmy and Jack hug.
Yeah. And then
really
in
cool.
this Lost Spider Pit, in the Spider Pit sequence on the director's cut, Jimmy starts reading a poem, and it fits Hayes, and it's so sad. Because Jimmy's basically lost his father. Like, his entire family.
Yeah. I forget if in the book version of this, they explain Jimmy's back. I don't think they do.
No, I don't think they do.
That. No, I
like having Jimmy's backstory as a mystery.
Yeah, wherever he came from, it wasn't any place good, as Hayes says. Did you also find it awesome that, again, this is kind of plays into that scene, that Jack Driscoll got like a cage as a cabin?
Oh God, Angle won't give you a great price for white rhino. I love that scene. Be careful! Camel had bad accident on floor. Stain unremovable.
Yeah.
Thanks for a heads up. Oh God.
Are you a lion or a chimpanzee?
Are you a lion or a chimpanzee? I'll take this one. Opens it. And if you look carefully at the scene as a little homage to the old 1933 version, you can see 2 of the original gas bombs tucked in the corner of that scene.
Yes. Also, that scene where Denham cracks open the lemonade, quote unquote, and you can see like the harpoons and everything.
Yeah, shields. Yeah. And then one of my favorite lines is in that scene. Good thing you brought that up. Is Jack Driscoll. If anybody asks, say you haven't seen me. Say I got depressed and committed suicide. Say I stuck my head down the toilet.
I love Jack Black's delivery there. Again, I love his performance. He's really funny.
Jesus. He's so funny when he first sees Jack Driscoll. He's like, Jesus.
Did I say Jack Driscoll?
No. You said Carl Denham, but I was just replaying the scene in my head.
Oh, okay. So yeah, he is funny when he needs to be. What else? Oh God. When workshops, Jesus Christ, they never fail to impress me.
They never do. And what I find funny is that Avatar gets all this great, the movie Avatar gets all this great things for all the great visual effects that Weta Workshop did, which never could have happened if it wasn't for this movie.
Right. Absolutely right. This movie is my definitive version of CGI.
Yeah, Kong looks so good.
Fuck Transformers. This is definitive computer-generated effects.
Yeah.
This shows that no matter what you're using for the effects, you still need to use like a maquette sculpt.
Yeah.
These fucking things look real.
Which is one thing I want to do with, motion capture was great in this movie. But Kong could not have been done without motion capture, which is one thing I want to do in my Godzilla series. Is I want all the creatures to be played by actors, just in a motion capture suit.
Yeah. Motion capture is the way to do CGI. And as I've said in past Legendary Picture Godzilla videos, please do not make the fights look glitchy as they are in Transformers. I hurt my eyes when I watch a fight in Transformers.
I don't know.
And in this movie, it's so fluid, so breathtaking,
and
just so exciting.
Which, one of the things I find funny, with a normal director, they would have shot the last scenes last. But no, Peter Jackson made sure to shoot the entire Empire State Building sequence first, because he didn't want it to be rushed and brought up at the ending. He wanted it to be the most drawn-out scene ever.
Yeah.
And it totally shows.
Yeah.
Again, that entire scene makes me cry. Especially the scene where the biplanes... Kong knows Kong just saved Anne and has placed her inside that little building on the Empire State Building, that little dome at the top. And she runs out and looks up at Kong, and he's standing up there, and he's looking at her. Looking down at her. And if you look into her eyes... he knows that his days are numbered and that he's dying. Every breath now is bringing him closer to his death. And then all of a sudden she climbs up and she sees the biplanes are about to encircle him. And then all of a sudden she starts waving her arms, screaming no. And you see Frank Darabont as the pilot just look at it, just sort of see this little outline. And the music is playing and Kong's roaring. And you can hear her voice echoing like, she's screaming to the top of her lungs, but you can't hear her, and she's just screaming, "No, please don't." She's bawling her eyes out, and the planes just suddenly just, like, fly, like, right past her, because they finally see her.
Yeah.
I mean, if that scene doesn't... If I don't get choked up or start crying before that, that's the scene that makes me cry. Like, even during the audio commentary with Peter Jackson starts crying.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah, during the audio commentary.
I've never watched that.
Like, he just shuts up. And you hear him, like, go... Oh god, I'm getting choked up. Well, not me. Peter Jackson was like that, but
I pretty much said all I want to say, because this really is hands down best remake ever made, and you know what? It really is one of my favorites. I do have a lot of nostalgia for it. I saw it on my birthday. All my friends got me presents relating to this movie. It was just a great film for me to see. It really is just great, regardless of my complaints. As much as I don't like the pacing in the second act, I still love it. It really is just one of my favorites. So that's really all I have to say. Do you have anything else you want to put in there?
No, other than, again, this is my all-time favorite film. I can literally recite the movie word for word. It's just so good.
Indeed.
Easily, I give it 4 out of 4. Easily. Fuck it. I give it a 6 out of 4.
I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. Really, just a great film. Really, just an example again of escapist entertainment done right. Hollywood, take note.
I know. Well, it's so funny because it wasn't filmed in the United States. It was filmed in New Zealand.
Right? I know. So awesome. But seriously, Hollywood, take note. This is how you should make movies.
Right.
Transformers needs to crawl in a corner and die.
Yeah.
That has been the staple of action for years. It needs to die.
Right.
I want to see more Peter Jackson King Kong movies. Or not sequels, but I mean like that.
Yeah, like that.
Escapist films.
Yeah.
So yeah, 5 out of 5 for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess now we can just talk about, like, what have these movies had for, like, a legacy on you? Like, I know we've said this constantly, but, like, how have these movies, or the original, not so much 76 and 2005, how have they sort of influenced you on, like, when you're directing a film or when you're writing out a screenplay? Because I'm going to bring up a story, but I'll let you start it off.
Okay, so when I'm directing a film, this film definitely influences my view of the action. Or not really, and I don't mean action in terms of people running around fighting.
Yeah.
In terms of what you see. 33 and 2005 have these really great wide-angle shots, where you just see beautiful widescreen photography. And whenever I film, I try to get everything that's important in frame. And it's got to be from this movie, from the original, and from 05 as well. I try to get everything that's important in frame, and just try to capture everyone's, all the actors, and all just the scenery's emotion. Because the thing about King Kong in both the original and 2005 is that the jungle becomes a character. And I like the scenery to almost be I would love the environment to be in the credits. Because it's one of those things that sucks the audience in and makes them feel like they're there. And as I've said, the original King Kong is not a movie, it's an experience. We feel like we're running around the jungle looking at dinosaurs and watching Kong fight them. Same thing in 05, hands down. And that's what I like to do with my movies. I like to suck people into them and just say, you're here, experience it. Otherwise, though, this really is just one of those movies that defined my childhood. Again, right up there with Godzilla. I always talk about Godzilla defining my childhood. Kong was up there, too. Watching the original was just a Saturday afternoon favorite of mine to do. Just sit down and watch the original King Kong. And also watch the remake. So again, just anything involving King Kong is nostalgic.
Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah.
I want to bring up this great story because after I filmed my first movie, God of the Invincible, I got a camera that I could plug it into a computer and edit with it because I had like all the programming stuff down, and I said I'm going to make a remake to King Kong, and I actually still have the screenplay. I have it locked away in a safe somewhere. I'm going to keep it because it's so cool.
Defended by asshole rats.
Right. But I actually did, and what happened was all my friends that were going to play in it were going to be Kong fans. They were all Kong fans. I converted them into Kong fans. It's sort of like Christianity, King Kong is just that important. No,
the Church of Kong.
You're right. And we wrote out a screenplay, and I'm going to say this: I designed my Carl Denham after Jack Black's, but okay, I was going to play him. I was going to play Carl Denham, but there was an interesting scene that I added in it. Was right before Carl Denham is about to go out and introduce his show. Anglehorn is there, and Anglehorn just is talking like how this isn't going to work.
That's cool. I like that.
And it catches Carl Denham off guard. I don't know. I just thought that was cool. I also had, and I don't think I would have wound up going with this, but I would have had a scene where the first day goes through fine. The first day of the show goes through fine. The next day is when he breaks out. Because I wanted the scene where he's at, like, where Kong is at a zoo, and, like, all these kids are just, like, throwing, like, tomatoes at him and shit like that, and making fun of Kong, like, calling him a freak and everything.
Yeah.
And I wanted there to be the scene where Andaro goes into the cage with Kong and just sort of stays there with Kong to just sort of keep him cool.
Kind of like in 76.
Yeah, kind of, but a little bit.
But better.
I wouldn't have gone with that. Again, I would have had Kong break out in the first night if I were to direct it, but,
Yeah. I've never actually thought of remaking King Kong.
I have, but I said no.
It's crossed my mind, maybe, but I never tried to sit down and do it. I don't know. I think after 2005, I don't think it's entirely necessary.
Yeah.
2005 is a masterpiece of just both remaking a film and just telling the King Kong story. I'm not really sure what could be done differently to not only enhance the experience, but also just not be changing things just for the sake of change. I don't know. I wouldn't attempt it.
Yeah, that's how I look at it.
I just don't think I can make a version that wouldn't just be fucking with things just for the sake of fucking with them,
Yeah. But,
that's just me.
Yeah. Like, I know, and again, this movie is how, between both 33 and 05 and several of the Mizaki Kobayashi films, this is the movies that really taught me this is how you should act. This is how you should tell your actors to present themselves. And, because of these movies, every single time I write out a script, I'm looking for, okay, what can I do to add some allegory into it, or to add some metaphors into it, or even cases of foreshadow.
Yeah, I do that. I do that too.
And even cases of foreshadow.
Yeah.
Because the scene where in 05 where Kong finally realizes that Andaro has tamed him is foreshadowing the ending.
Yeah. One thing that the original has kind of brought about in me as a writer more than directing, both, is in capturing atmosphere and using shots that kind of establish the mood. The thing about 33 that 05 has is that 33 doesn't have a lot of establishing shots. Except for that one where you first see Skull Island, usually the camera picks a spot and the action immediately starts. You don't get those scenes where it just kind of, just establishes the scenery and then the action starts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
33 really doesn't have that. 05 does, but not quite as often as you see in a lot of movies today. You see the Empire State Building before Kong climbs up it in 05. You don't see that in 33.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. So I don't. It's definitely done that to me. But also 33, it's got this haze to the film that I try to have in all my movies now. In my new movie, which this will be the first time I mention it on recording, I'm making a movie called Dr. Frankenstein vs. the Wolfman. In all the lab scenes, I have hot water behind the camera, letting steam go in front of it to give the film a haze.
Huh. See, I would be lazy and just do it all with CG.
Yeah, well, I don't have the capabilities to do that, so I literally had, like, jugs of hot water behind the camera, and I'm going to do this more when I start filming again, but I only did this a little bit when I filmed the other day. It gives the film a sort of haze that not really makes it scary, or just gives it a look, and Kong 33 has that.
Well, okay, so I'm just going to lay this out. Your trademark, and this is how I'm going to identify all of your films, is that you're going to have a random miss scene. Ishiro Honda has scenes where they're climbing up mountains. Adam Noyes is going to have scenes where people are dying in slow motion.
Damn straight.
There. Because each director has their own style.
Billy Wurster, Adam Noyes. Billy Wurster is the fog guy, Adam Noyes is the gore guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
So now we're totally off topic. That's pretty much my final thoughts on King Kong. Just one of the greatest stories ever committed to film.
Yeah, well said. Thanks for joining me here today.
It was an honor.
Yeah, it's such a great topic.
Definitely. We could do this for days.
I know, we could probably wind up doing a sequel to this.
Definitely. We probably could.
Probably could do a video on each friggin' movie, probably. But
yeah. So 76 was. I think we pretty much covered everything with 76.
Yeah, 76 would be a short chat.
Yeah. 33 and 05 could be totally like multi-part reviews, and we could just go into an immaculate detail.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah,
it was great being here.
Yeah. Again, thank you. Make sure to check this guy out. He's a pretty cool dude. Just hit the like button, leave a few comments. I love debating, in case you haven't got it from this video. So, if you disagree with both of us, just leave a comment. Just be respectful about it, okay?
Yeah. I mean,
don't be a troll.
We didn't fight when we were disagreeing.
Right.
It's a friendly rivalry.
Right. Make sure to subscribe. If you think, add me as a friend, for Christ's sakes. I might even accept it.
Might.
Might.